What is trust? Welcome to Philosopher's Corner. I'm John. What is trust? The standard definition is the condition and obligation of having confidence placed in one. So it means that I put confidence in someone else, and the nature of that confidence is malleable. It can be whatever. I can be putting confidence in them to get a task done. I can be putting confidence in them to have an emotional objective. It can be anything. But that bond that occurs happens because I give them a charge. And what it is between us. And that is dependent on the communication between us and what we perceive that charge to be. So I could put trust in them to complete a task for me. I can put trust in them to do something for me, to me. I could put trust in them to, watch my pets, watch my kids, get a job done. It could be emotional romantic relationship. I could put trust in a woman to love me in a certain way. I can put trust into authority figures to get certain jobs done on my behalf. I can trust my politicians to govern in my name properly. I can trust an emergency room doctor to fix my injuries when I show up. It's a really wide-ranging bond, and typically it's the basis of most conscious relationships. You have to have this bond, because when a relationship occurs, it begins with a connection. And I did a video on connections, relationships, and networks. When you begin that bonding process, it really begins with trust. If you're going to expect something, if you're going to communicate with somebody to get them to complete a task, or you're giving them your energy essentially, and you're sharing your energy with them in order to achieve either a common or solitary objective. And so philosophically, when we get into it, the common question really, because philosophy it's mainly rational, almost, well, it may even be entirely rational, and excuse me. So when it comes to the philosophical dissection of trust, what a lot of people want to know is, how do we rationalize it? Because trust has risk, right? Trust has essentially a lot of emotional risk, but definitely energetic risk, which is what emotions are. And it risks the outcome of how you're basically managing your life. Whether it's small or large or whatever, trust always has an element of risk, because you're placing your confidence to get something done outside of your control into another person. So philosophically, a lot of people try to figure out, how do we mitigate that risk? How do we use reason and rationalize the risk down? They're trying to get it down to nothing. And so that's like one of the first basic questions philosophically is, can you mitigate risk vis-a-vis trust down to nothing? Now, off the bat, I'm just going to say no. Like, to save us a lot of discussion, and to say, like, can you get it down to zero? No. But there are many ways in which people like to look at it to try to minimize the risk, so they can try to have a decision matrix in their head of how to trust, or who to trust, or when to trust. And those include observing the person's, their track record in the associated field that you're looking at. No different than if you went to a Yelp review, like, do you want to trust that you're going to go spend money at this restaurant? And, obviously when you look at Yelp, if you see a restaurant with a 5-star review and a bunch of nice customer reviews, you're going to tend to trust that place even if you haven't been there. And if you look at a place that has a 2-star Yelp review and everybody says it's not good, then obviously you're not going to trust that place, and you're not going to go there unless maybe you have to, or there's some other reason that outweighs the risk of that distrust that now you have, because there's this public reputation of the trust. And reputation is definitely a derivative of trust. That's a good trust or bad trust. Like, word gets out, and reputations are born based on trust. Like, when people repeatedly place confidence in you or an institution, and things either happen or don't happen accordingly, that really is the basis of building reputation. You know, like, same thing with high school popularity. You know, trust is a lot of it, and gossip and stuff like that is related to trust, right? So, like, for instance, in that situation, when you're in high school and you have your social cliques, well, you find people that you sort of begin the building of figuring out trust. Like, oh, can I tell this person intimate details about me without them getting out to the group that I don't want? And you find out, oh, well, they gossiped about me and this and that. It could only come from them. So now I don't trust them anymore. And then people find out, oh, well, they're trustworthy or they're not trustworthy. And that sort of goes all throughout life. Like, I'm a former military officer and had security clearances. And that's essentially a really codified, fancy version of high school gossip rating. Like, they go, okay, well, if we can trust you with top secret information, like, you didn't tell anybody, you didn't sell it to anybody, you didn't tell foreign governments, okay, cool, like, you're trustworthy. So now you can handle top secret information, or now you can handle, you know, even higher level information because we trust you, right? It has practical applications. You know, even in the financial sector, when I wouldn't say a credit score is so much trust, because that's a little different, but they try to make it seem as though that's trust. And maybe it is to an extent, but, like, well, in their world, it is trust. Like, the credit score rating or loan ratings and stuff like that. I mean, without hashing up the whole thing of systemic, prejudices against both, like, socioeconomic groups and racial areas, which are definitely prevalent. The system is designed to set up to try to establish a form of discerning financial trust in potential customers for institutions to lend to. So trust is a principle that pervades society, and the common root of how these systems are set up is that they're trying to rationalize a way to minimize the risk in trust. So one of the many ways they try to do it is a track record of trust in the area that they're concerned in, whether it's financial, emotional, informational, fill in the blank. It can be whatever. And trust in those senses, when you're trying to mitigate it or trying to weigh it and determine how much of it you want to ascribe to a person, you really can't rationalize it all, because it's a case-by-case basis. So a person who could be totally stellar and trustworthy on every front, if you get them into a particular position and it's just happens to be the one time that something else outweighs their obligation to you in that moment, and even if it's not nefarious, even if they just have to, like, just because of life circumstances, they have to prioritize other things in that moment other than what they've obligated to you, they're going to have to, like, in a way, break trust with you to fulfill these other priorities. And in an objective analysis, it may be 100% the right thing to do. They may have, like, said, hey, you've put trust in them to go get you a cup of coffee at 7-Eleven, and while they're out, there's a car accident, and they have to administer first aid, and they have to ride with the person, and all of a sudden the day's gone by, and they were not able to get you that cup of coffee because they were busy saving somebody's life. Now, technically, they've broken your trust, but objectively, it was a justified reason to break that trust. You know, to go save another life, to go help people, to be good for the community, all that sort of thing. And obviously that's an extreme example, but when we're weighing these things, it's good to use an extreme example to make clear one side of a philosophical debate, right? Because most of this stuff is way more balanced when you're trying to figure these things out. Now, that being said, if you're a really complex person and you realize, okay, well, we can't mitigate the risk externally down to nothing. That's impossible. You really can't. Okay, but you can get a really good sense of how that person that you're going to place the trust in is going to handle complex situations, and if they're going to be able to navigate it with you in the long run, or at least be trustworthy enough to honor it to the best of their ability. And that's kind of where you can really get to, is just, is this person to like the highest degree possible gonna do it, whatever that thing is, right? And it's not just a person, it can be a group, it can be an institution, and of course it can be even, it can even be something mystical or ethereal. Trust in spiritual powers and beings and things like that. That migrates into faith. Trust goes from faith, or maybe faith goes to trust. Either way, it's kind of the same thing. And it's also based on track record and then results that you get when you invested your energy. Because trust, where the rubber meets the road, is that trust is it's an investment of your energy and giving your faculty and your energy into someone else, and you're trusting their capability to achieve something for you using your energy and your confidence. And so it just comes back and forth into a relationship where you go, okay, I gave this person my energy and like what my expectations were, and now we've had enough time where I can do the assessment as to whether or not it turned out right. And it's almost always, you can do it up here, but usually it comes down to an emotional analysis, which comes down to the heart. And when you get through the emotional analysis, then usually your brain will tell you why you felt that way. That's a better way to go, in my opinion, is when it comes to emotional investments and energetic assessments, you let it come back into your heart, you feel how you feel, and you honor your feelings, and then you go, and then you put it through your mind, and then you figure out, to the best of your ability, the rational aspects of it to see, okay, this and this and this. So that's trust in an external manner, right? It comes with risk. You're putting confidence in someone or something else to achieve an objective for you, or to engage in a relationship objective, basically. And you have to determine whether or not that makes you feel good or bad and where it's at. Now, the other part of trust that I think doesn't get spoken about enough is trust in yourself, right? So there's of course, there's always risk in like putting things out into the external world. That's the thing. But trust within oneself, trusting yourself, right? And of course, this always goes back to know thyself, which I have another video on. You can go through the playlist and find it. What does it mean to know thyself? And part of knowing thyself is when you go through the process of becoming aware and conscious of yourself and going as deep as you can into yourself and through all your stuff, your pros and cons, you learn which parts of yourself you can trust and like how trustworthy you are for yourself in certain subjects, right? And that comes down to self-discipline, which I also have a video about. And in the self-discipline of it, you become honest with yourself, and you go, okay, how much confidence do I have in myself? And that's really what self-confidence is about. And self-confidence is trusting yourself. Before you look, some things you have to go externally, right? Some things, I can't do my own dental work, so I have to trust a dentist. I can't, I can't teach myself dog training. I have to trust a dog trainer or whatever. But a lot of things I have to learn to trust myself first, because then I know what are the things I can accomplish for myself. What are the things that I need to put confidence in for myself? And what things do I do in myself that I don't trust myself to do? And not just because I don't have the strength or stamina or whatever, or because I think I'm a dishonest person, but just because they're outside of my abilities, or because of whatever factor that I realize maybe I just can't get that done. And now, of course, you don't know until you try. But when you live enough life, then you get a sort of track record, a personal track record, where as long as we're honest with ourselves, as long as I'm deeply honest with myself, I know what things I can trust myself with. And then that way, when I know what level of trust I have in myself, and sometimes I sometimes I don't come through for myself, and sometimes I do. And when I get that track record of that, and I see the trends, and I get honest, and I fix what I can, and I evolve, and I try to get better in some areas and keep maintenance in other areas, that's really when I'm in a position to be able to engage in connections and relationships with other people with a higher degree of confidence, keeping in mind that trust, going, okay, I know what it's like to trust myself and this and that. Now when I engage with other people, which always requires trust in them, from simple things to complex things, from short-term to long-term things, now that I know what to expect from myself on the trust level, now I have a reasonable expectation or a reasonable overlay of how to approach other people and engage other people vis-a-vis trust, meaning putting confidence in them to achieve a task outside of myself that affects me, or achieve an emotional outcome or a relationship or whatever the circumstance is of the trust being placed in the other person or institution or whatever. And where I think that helps mitigate the risk is that if I know what level of trust I have in myself, which really equates to security, like self-security, then I can know that if I go to another person for something, that I don't have to be as emotionally dependent and vulnerable in that moment of trust, because I still have trust in myself that even if they don't get it done, not in a pessimistic way, just in a realistic way, if they don't get that thing done or we don't get to that emotional resolution that I need, that it's not going to crush me, because I have trust in myself that I can survive that, and then I don't have to put external circumstances on that person that might actually cause them to not achieve that thing. If my lack of trust in myself, which manifests in insecurity, is placed on that person or that thing, that can actually inhibit the completion of the task or the emotional objective we have. And then I'll end up blaming them. I go, oh, well, they're untrustworthy, because I projected all my insecurities on them, which come from a lack of trust within myself. And so having trust and secure self-confidence in self breeds trust in others. And then even if they turn out to not be trustworthy for whatever reason on those fronts, I can emotionally survive that because I have emotional security and trust and self-confidence. And then also they can feel it. It breeds that confidence, that self-confidence, and that trust, right? And then we can start on a good footing, good emotional footing, and good emotional trust and relationship being exchanged when they can feel that I'm secure and that I actually have real trust in them, and that it's not an insecure hope that I'm just saying, oh, I can't do this, I need you to do it, and then just like being like sitting on the sideline waiting for them to fail so I can be like, oh, well, I don't trust you. It'd be the opposite of that. It'd be, look, I'm a very self-confident, secure, trustworthy person, and I trust that you're the same, and we're going to do this. And whether it's a big or small thing, that sets it off on a good foot, because we're human beings and we don't, we can't do everything to 100% completion all the time, and things happen. And that's aside from people, having character defects or having personal agendas or being manipulative or deceitful or any of that stuff. But we start off on good footing with good vibes and good self-confidence. That gives us the best chance to make that trust work. And when trust works and those connections are honored and they continue to go through time, then that can flourish into healthy, strong, bonded relationships. And, then that really gets beautiful. And then when you have a number of those types of relationships, they can become trustworthy networks. And then life gets really good. So what is trust? That, is putting confidence in other people and yourself to get things done or accomplished on your behalf. So thanks for spending some time here at Philosopher's Corner. I hope you found it helpful. And as always, have fun.